back to the Mina Kimes Show, featuring Lenny, the only NFL podcast where one of the hosts is convinced that Matthew Golden is named after Air Bud Golden Receiver. That's Lenny. I'm Mina Kimes. Matthew Golden, by the way, in Green Bay, getting picked. Electric.
Oh, I thought you were talking about him switching the number from 81 to 22, which is just very poor situational awareness.
Downgrade him
the
from this podcast.
Are very concerned about 22 on a receiver.
It was an awesome moment. I'm back from Green Bay. You're back from Bristol. We're here to talk about the draft. So I'm doing 2 draft episodes this week because I want to get to a lot of teams and a lot of picks. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, why aren't they talking about XYZ? Like Tyler Shook, I don't know. I'm going to get to that in the second episode of the week because there's so much to talk about with the draft. Today, we are doing our biggest winners and things that made us go, I don't call them losers. Questions, skepticism, whatever you want to call it.
Brow raisers.
Brow raisers is good. We're going to do that in the second half, which means that this podcast will not be discussing Shedeur Sanders until 40 minutes in.
Don't give them a timestamp. You have to listen all the way through. Keep the engagement numbers up. It's somewhere in the middle.
I think people want it. I think people are pretty Shedeured out.
That's actually a good point. I don't know that a lot of my buddies at church on this Sunday are all Steelers fans, and all they wanted to talk about was the Browns taking Shedeur and why they didn't take Shedeur. It was all about Shedeur, and I was like, man, I have no energy for this anymore.
We're actually we're gonna hit the Browns and the Steelers in the Shedeur conversation later, but we're not gonna do that. We're talking winners first. And can I start by saying this was actually really hard for me because there were a lot of drafts that I would give like A- B+ to. Like there were a lot of good drafts. Did you feel the same way?
I did. I also like the league coming into this draft. Oh, this draft class is not that good. Oh, we don't like it very much. It's not a great draft class. And then I feel like everybody drafted great. Like there weren't like too many big reaches at the beginning of the first round, top of the board. The ones that happened, you kind of understand why they happened, right? Okay, do we think Tyler Booker was going to go top 15? Maybe not. I definitely get why he did, So it's like, and then you go finish day 2, you look, pretty much everybody that I expected went. Like not too many big fallers. Like I put aside the obvious, conversation of Shedeur. But everybody did a delightful job. Great work, NFL. Good drafting.
I'm going to start with my first winner. We're going to go alternate in the first half of this. I love what the New England Patriots did.
Yeah.
I love that the first half of their draft was entirely devoted to what they really didn't do in free agency, which was help out the young quarterback, Drake May. And coming into this draft, I was concerned that they were going to be, desperate, and that might cause them to reach. And one could argue Will Campbell, 4th overall pick, would they have done that if they had an average left tackle? Probably, but yeah. I feel like so much better about the environment for May headed into this season. And you don't want to estimate the impact of rookies for sure. But so I don't mean like Will Campbell, Travion Henderson, the running back of Ohio State, Kyle Williams, wide receiver out of Washington State, and then they drafted Jared Wilson, center out of Georgia. I don't mean to say they're all going to be awesome immediately, but I feel good about at least like 2 of those players hitting early on. And I think if you're a Pats fan, let's just start here. Like that's got to feel good to have some excitement and confidence in this offensive build because you did not feel that way before this draft.
I'm willing to say they're all going to be awesome immediately. I love all 4 of these players. We talked about Henderson versus Quinshon Judkins, right? When I came on to do skill positions, and I was more
Judkins
of a Judkins.
First.
But Henderson for a Josh McDaniels, who has historically been really good using backs in the passing game, for a player in Drake May, a quarterback in Drake May, I don't think people realize how much they use the backs, right? Ramondre Stevenson had 33 catches last season. Antonio Gibson had 23. JaMychal Hasty had another 10. Like May is very willing to get the ball out to the back early. This is a good spot for him. I think it tells you a little bit about how the new coaching staff feels about Ramondre Stevenson and his 7 fumbles. I think running back this early kind of surprised some people, but I don't know how much trust there is in Stevenson in that building right now. So I thought it was a good landing spot for Henderson. Kyle Williams fits kind of the mold of player that they've had right now in Stephon Diggs and Demario Douglas in terms of the separation ability and the quickness, but then adds, I think, some additional gears, right? The whole thing about Douglas is he's quick, not fast. The whole thing about Diggs is he's sturdy, right? And so that the speed isn't what it used to be. Williams, I think, gives you a little bit more of that dynamic down the field potential, something you really want with Drake May. And then I think Will Campbell's like lock and load 10-year left tackle. If he's not, I think he's a lock and load 10-year guard. I think he's the safest player in the class. And Jared Wilson, I had like early 2 on him. I thought he was like a top 40
Yeah.
player. Like this to me is
That
like
was, what was it, 4th round, it looks, I believe?
end of the third, right? At the end of the third,
End of
they
the
got
3rd.
Wilson, who he
That
like
was
people were
surprising.
talking about him Seattle in the middle of the second
Yeah.
round of the zone. He's a zone scheme guy because of his movement skills. He can pull. He is not just to me stuck in zone. He's 6'3", 310. He's not that small for a center. And when he was in high school, he was like 350. It wasn't good weight, but like it's not accurate to say, oh, he's so undersized, he must be a zone center. They have Garrett Bradbury, obviously. And so they don't need him to start right away. They can, bring him on slowly if they need to. But I would not be surprised to see Wilson win that job out of camp. All 4 of those players, I was pleased as pie.
I think that the other thing I would say about the draft is not only did I like the players they got, not only do I feel a lot better about the offense, but I like them where they got them for the most part. You talk about Jared Wilson being a bargain where he was drafted. Kyle Williams in the 3rd round, yes, please. Especially again, like I wanted him for Seattle, quite frankly. And we'll talk about their draft, but yeah, I thought great value. And then the players they took later on: Josh Farmer, the defensive tackle out of Florida State, and then Braden Swinson, who was kind of a puzzling dropper to me, the edge rusher out of LSU. Really, it felt like they really did get the best player available relative to their needs at almost every round in this draft. So it's not just that they had this offensive focus, but they got some interesting defensive guys later on at positions they also needed to augment. I just feel like top to bottom, I like almost every single one of these picks, to be honest. Which
Farmer
is
and
kind of hard to
Swinson,
say.
yeah, that felt like they were like, all right, and now the defensive boards is kind of just falling to us. Let's go ahead and make these picks.
Yeah.
The book on Swinson was that he and the LSU coaching staff didn't always have the best relationship. Like that was reported. I think like Dane had it in the Beast that he butted heads with the coaching staff. He was suspended for a game this year for team activities, right? And you don't really know what exactly that is. And so it's probably the coachability aspect and the locker room aspect. But if you're the Patriots and you're saying, our edge rush position, we're willing to take dart throws here. We're an ascending team. If we miss on a 5th round pick on Swinson because he's just not great in the locker room, like it's not like we need this guy to be a ringer for us in the playoffs. That's the sort of high risk, high reward pick that you want to make. So I agree. Woodson as well, the safety out of Cal, good little player. Not elite athlete, not elite size, but sees it, plays it fast. He's fun to watch.
So to just wrap it up a little, I do want to go back to, because the offensive line obviously was a need, and we've talked a lot about Will Campbell and Henderson. You kind of talked about why you feel he fits in that offense. How do we feel now about we're looking at a grouping of Diggs, Douglas, Kyle Williams, if he sees the field right away? How do we feel about that as a group? Specifically, how they fit together and how they fit for Drake May's skill set. Pardon me.
Yeah. So I'm still worried we don't have a wide receiver 1, right? We have a
There's no big-bodied X receiver.
Yeah, like Jalen Polk, maybe can be that guy if you squint. Obviously, going off the Washington eval, off of what you saw in his rookie season, you're kind of really worried. Again, Williams, I think is going to be a handy player at the NFL level. I don't think he's going to be a primary dominant target getter, and so I still don't see that individual. But the Patriots really wanted to get that individual in free agency. He was not, they put the money in front of Godwin. Godwin said no and stayed to Tampa. And then at 4, there just wasn't that caliber of receiver available. So I don't mind them not forcing the issue, like you said. And then offensive line, same thing. If we call the best 5, Will Campbell, Cole Strange, Mike Onwenu, Morgan Moses, and let's say it's Garrett Bradbury and not Jared Wilson, you're going to lose some games because Garrett Bradbury is going to lose and Cole Strange is going to lose. The offensive line, the issue is also not solved. They put the resources where they should have. They are turning the corner and making the investment. I think the offense is going to get better. I think it'll largely be better in November and December. But we still in terms of guys who really put their thumb on the scale for the offense, field tipping players right now. This is again, it's Hunter Henry and it's Ramondre Stevenson, it's Stephon Diggs. It's just good players right now. They don't really have the blue chip talent yet.
Henry and Drake May actually had quite a nice connection in the second half of the season, quietly. I just between Diggs and Kyle Williams, the route running has improved so much, so dramatically over what most of those guys were giving them last season. And you talked about Williams. I really liked him. I do think he is a separator at all 3 levels, the deep part of the field being the thing that was missing for this offense and something that Drake May can absolutely take advantage of. I'm excited about him. You're right. He's not a number 1, but they just needed speed so bad. And for them to get him in particular, because I really didn't feel like there was anyone else in the draft, especially at that point, who was kind of comparable to him. I just think it's a home run pick. All right. Who's your first winner?
My first winner are the Chargers. I just love the Chargers draft. And even if it's like,
Interesting.
even if it's not like A+ for everybody, whatever, like a lot of these guys were just simply my dudes. And I think they all fit very nicely. Omarion Hampton, I was head over heels for him, right? I thought he was a lot closer to Ashton Genty, a lot more clear of a first round pick than a lot of other people did. Falling to 22, the second, like the Chargers at the clock, I said, oh, please, like Hampton behind this offensive line, kind of in this Greg Roman style of running game with all the power and the extra bodies they're going to put on the field. Like, this guy, when he gets to his top speed, he gets there pretty fast. He is a bowling ball. He is tough to bring down. He's J.K. Dobbins with a jetpack, like with the actual speed you need to be successful. So I love the fit there. Trey Harris, the wide receiver at Ole Miss in the second round, was again a guy that I like. Trey Harris is big in the analytics community because his numbers are great. He plays in a lane Kiffin offense. I was fully expecting to just hate the film. Like, I usually can't stand these guys because they run 4 routes. They don't know how to do it. Trey Harris has ball tracking. He has physicality and toughness, contested catch. He has route running. 6'3", 210. He's the big body that they need. He doesn't shy away from contact like some of the other big bodies currently in the Chargers wide receiver room. So that's a very good fit. Later in the draft, they also got Keandre Lambert-Smith out of Auburn, who he's now your field stretchy type, which again, they needed to add the speed. And then last but not least, Jamari Caldwell. Out of Oregon, a player who I wrote down Poona Ford's name multiple times while watching. They lost Poona Ford in free agency. And if you listen to them after the free agent period, listen to Harbaugh talk and Ortiz talk, they did not think they were going to lose Poona, and they were not stoked about losing Poona, especially because he just moved across the street, right? Like, they got priced out of that, and they were kind of pissed. Caldwell's got that squatty nose tackle build, but he played 3-tech at Houston before he transferred. And if he slims down a little bit, he can give you something in the pass rush. He's very much their style of defensive tackle. Across the board players I liked, Rondé Gatson didn't even say, players I liked who fit needs for them, I thought they nailed it.
They also got the edge out of South Carolina, who was sneaking out bad. Yeah, because I watched so much South Carolina defense, and I was like, oh, especially where they got him. Okay, we're going to disagree here. I would have taken Matthew Golden over Omarion Hampton. So this was a great kind of like your player versus my player kind of moment in the draft, right? Because the Steelers go Derek Harmon, and then everyone kind of holds their breath, right? Because Matthew Golden has been falling a little bit, especially with the Cowboys. When the Cowboys didn't take him, I think that was kind of like a whoa moment in the draft, and they took Booker instead. And Ted McMillan went earlier. Pardon me, I'm going to talk about him. So the Chargers come up, and everyone's thinking the whole time, nobody thought the Chargers would take a receiver in the first round. Nothing about this team and the way they talk about it and their approach to team building and the commitment to running the football. It was always going to be either one of the tight ends, probably, or Omarion Hampton. But Matthew Golden was right there. And then you got the Green Bay Packers, who also don't take receivers, who are right there. So you got these two teams that clearly both need a receiver and need a separator and need speed. And there's kind of this like stare down moment. I believe also the Eagles were talking to the Chargers about a trade there for Jahad Campbell. I don't know if you saw.
I'm sure they were. Yeah. They're calling everybody under the sun.
They thought they had it. And Campbell's family, I think heard was like ready for it in the.
Oh, like they felt like it was there.
Whole moment. And then they were freaking out because they thought they wouldn't get him. It's the whole thing. But anyways, so look, I like Hampton. I agree with you. I think he's a great fit. Really good fit for the scheme. I understand. And I like Trey Harris, too. He's a great contested catch guy. Obviously has a really big physique, big frame. I just feel like it's going to be November. Justin Herbert's going to be throwing to guys who aren't open, and I'm going to be screaming at my television. I just feel that way, Ben. And I know I'm higher than Golden than you. We talked about it. And I love that pick for the Packers. I just don't like going running back there. I don't. Sorry. I just don't.
This is one of those spots where if pre-draft we had talked about it, right? And you'd been like, hey, Hampton's on the board at 22, Golden's on the board at 22. What should the Chargers do? A thing that probably would have come out of my mouth is, well, the running back class is a lot deeper than the wide receiver class. So maybe you go for Golden can be like a 3-down player for you, 3-level receiver. Maybe you draft him and you go for running back day 2. Like that's a smart way to handle the board. Once the chips fall, and I know I get Hampton, who I far prefer to Golden in round 1, and then I'm able to get Trey Harris, who
prefer.
Yeah. For better or for worse. Well, because like the Chargers, I think have some problems with this. For better or worse, the Chargers really like big receivers. They want to have guys who have your Quentin Johnson and your Mike Williams, like even Keenan Allen in the slot. Like they've always just been big receiver pilled. Trey Harris is probably not the best separator in the world, but he is so much better at doing the little things that big receivers need to do to create throwing windows and win the ball than you would have expected of a player playing at Ole Miss, and certainly than Quentin Johnson, their incumbent player in that role. They needed that to fill size, right? If they had drafted Golden, I would have said, I totally get it. I love it. Speed, whatever. You got 6-foot Ladd McConkey and you have 5'11" Matthew Golden, and you have a quarterback who wants to throw passes above the rim. He wants to throw, like Herbert throwing to receivers who recovered. Yes. Herbert also likes to throw 50-50 balls. He absolutely does. He loves to throw contested catches.
He's done it a lot in that Chargers offense.
So to me, like that Harris fits very nicely the role they want to fill and the quarterback that they have. The fact that they got him, and I know they got him at 2 and second round, makes me perfectly fine with Hampton in the first.
I wish they had added speed. That's all. I just
Keandre Lambert-Smith.
I wanted
KLS, baby, you can fly.
We're not doing that. I wanted Kyle Williams for them too, by the way. I was throwing out his name for the Chargers. But all right.
I'm happy they double dipped at receiver. That was good. That was necessary.
It's a good draft, and I think Hampton will be great in that offense. I would have gone in a different direction. All right. The team that did take a receiver is my next team. The team that took this was a kind of a surprising moment, right? Because this whole process, everybody thinking the Panthers were going to go defense, and nobody really knew when Ted McMillan was going to go in the draft. It was all over the place. It was rumors were as high as Jacksonville at 5. Obviously, they had their eye on a different receiver who we're gonna talk about him, by the way, later. And there was draft mocks that had him dropping to Seattle, but the Panthers jumped in, took him at 8, and then they took 2 pass rushers. I love this: Nick Scorton and Princely
Umanmielen.
You got it?
Yeah,
okay. Umanmielen. Gosh dang it. Out of A&M and Ole Miss. And then they...
Fun Princely story. His older brother is named Prince Umanmielen, and his younger brother is named Prince Will Umanmielen. Princely and Prince Will Umanmielen. That's a good family right there.
I didn't like him enough. Then they took the back, Trevor Etienne. They took the tight end, Mitchell Evans, out of Notre Dame. Sneaky decent.
Love him.
And then Jimmy Horn Jr., which I really like that too, at receiver. But let's start with Ted before we get to the pass rushers, because so I like their draft as a whole. I just want to emphasize that. But the McMillan pick, because I don't know why I was just like, they're going to go defense, because the defense was just, the cover was so bare. Poor Ajiro Evero. Just like, my defense, it's starving. But obviously Bryce Young played well down the stretch, and they've given him a lot of votes of confidence this offseason. The way they talk about him, they're pretty sold on him next year. The receiver group is still bad, right? So a stat that I brought up on NFL Live after the draft, or after day 1, McMillan on 3rd down had the second most conversions in all of college football, 0 drops. The Panthers didn't have a receiver in the top 45 last year in terms of conversions on 3rd down. So I think that actually just captures what they so desperately need, which is a guy who will get a bucket for you, a guy who will catch everything thrown his way. No, he's not a burner. No, he's not a top-end separator, but he is reliable, and he is a gigantic target for Bryce Young. So I just absolutely love them not just going receiver there and committing to their quarterback, but getting this receiver in particular, I thought was a home run.
Yeah, Dan Morgan very clearly understands what he thinks is going to work in Carolina. If you look at every addition they've made over the last 2 off seasons, it just get big people in the building. Like it's so linebacker pilled, and I love it. Right, but if you go like their free agency spending, man, all right, Trevon Merrick, get him in here. They wanted Milton Williams, Tershawn Wharton, boom. Bobby Brown, enormous, get him. We have Jadeveon Clowney rushing the passer. Get Nick Skouerton, who's 280. Get Princely Umanmielen, he's got like 34-inch arms. The wide receiver room, we're going to add Xavier Legette. We already have Adam Thielen, like big slot. We're going to add Xavier Legette, big. We're going to add Jalen Coker, 4-speed guy, big. And then we're going to go add Tedero McMillan, large. Like they want the Robert Hunt signing, right? Like Damian Lewis, they just so clearly were like, all right, we just need to level up. We need to be a far stronger, more physically imposing team. That's going to be the philosophy from Morgan. I think that works really well, like you said, in the receiver room for Bryce Young, right? I do feel a little bit for Ted McMillan, who went from college's version of Bryce Young and Noah Fafita, right? Smaller quarterback, runs around back there, kind of throws up a lot of like, hey, help me out here, jump balls. Going to the NFL version, I feel for
that is too far. Do not compare Bryce Young to that U of A quarterback. As someone who watched that U of A quarterback, that is so over the line.
Tedero McMillan, well, he played with Fafita in high school. He played with Fafita in college. He's going to play with Bryce Young. He has never played with a quarterback in his life who he can't see the top of their head.
Bryce Young down the stretch, by the way, was throwing absolute dimes on 3rd down. They just were not getting caught. To go back to what I was saying at the beginning, there were some throws he made like against the blitz in like clutch situations down the stretch. I could not believe were not caught. Look, I also love that they doubled up at edge. I just, this was obviously a position of needs, reason why we thought they were going to go edge. Because really, they just need one of these guys to hit. And I think they're both interesting prospects. You talked about it's Scourton. I've been saying Scourton.
Yeah, Scourton and Uman Mielin.
Damn, Uman Mielin. You got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's more syllables than you think. Yeah.
Scourton. Yeah. You hit it. He's big, powerful. Uman Princely, Scott Princely, has more of the prototypical frame, but he's not as strong. So it's just kind of
like light too.
Yeah.
He's that speed rusher type.
Yeah. So they're
their
different
front seven. Yeah, or I should say their front four because linebacker's still a little bit thin. But they're front and they're too deep at front, right? Some of the rotational guys that they have DJ Wanham in the building. They signed Patrick Jones at free agency. They have Jadeveon Clowney, and some of those guys are rising free agents. They're going to move on from them. Some of these edge picks are future looking, but for this season, they have a stable of guys, and you don't know if any one of those dudes is a plug and chug 12 sack guy. But there's so much positional versatility, so much inside out versatility and unique fronts. Like Evero, Evero's a sharp dude. He just didn't have a lot of resources last year. Evero's going to get some pass rush packages on third down. They're going to work really well for this team. I believe that. So I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I just exactly. You kind of nailed what I like about it, which is like, let's get different types of bodies, different types of players, different skill sets, figure out how to use them. One of them is probably going to hit, right? Or, so I think their whole approach, I think, makes a lot of sense. So on the whole, though, I just, starting with McMillan, adding those other pass catchers later on. I mean, Mitchell Evans, like, honestly, like I kind of warmed up to him just watching Notre Dame, not for him really. And I'm not sure what he's certainly his ceiling, I don't think is super high as a pro, but he is perfectly capable of being, a guy that they can bring in multiple tight end packages. And then Horn Jr. is another guy who had pretty exciting flashes at Colorado. All right. Who's your next team?
There was a very good NFL analyst, I can't remember who it was, who said whoever team Jihad Campbell falls to is going to get the steal of the first round. And then lo and behold, baby, the Philadelphia Eagles. Go Birds.
Okay. The great thing about y'all winning the Super Bowl is we no longer have to deal with the like, oh, are you guys just like what Howie Roseman does because it's players you heard of? Because like, you really can't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. But like this was a player that I had a particularly unique affinity for.
Yeah, and I would say like the Jihad Campbell pick is like certainly it's Howie season. He fell, whatever. He had like a labrum. Like we all knew he was going to fall to some degree. Yeah. It's more to me like a Vic Fangio season pick in the sense that Campbell was recruited to Alabama as an edge rusher. He was a very high caliber edge rusher recruit. They didn't have room for him in the edge room. They kicked him to stack linebacker because they needed help there. And he really emerged and blossomed, but is still not yet like a finished product there where it's like, okay, clearly he's a stack linebacker. There are several teams for whom if they drafted Campbell, the plan would be tricky to figure out. Like how many snaps are we going to give it to him? Where are we going to give them?
It with Zach Bond. Right. The plan is already there. The blueprint exists. But that's so infuriating.
It's a harder blueprint to copy than you would think. And when you have one of the progenitors of Vic Fangio.
I'm saying, like, did the thing with this very similar type of player. Sorry.
And so they'll be able to do it again. And then the other thing to always remember, like, Fangio, like Bond was incredible. Fangio was there for Roquan Smith coming out of Georgia and getting him there. Fangio was with Navarro Bowman and Patrick Willis in San Francisco. Fangio was very, very good for stack linebackers, for off-ball linebackers. He understands how to work with those players. And so the way Roseman talks about Campbell, they're going to give him a lot of edge looks. That's kind of where they need snaps right now. But Nakobe Dean's coming off a major injury. He is a rising free agent. Like Campbell's also going to get looks at stack linebacker. I have a lot of faith that they're going to get that guy right. Following Campbell, it was Andrew Makuba, the safety out of Texas, who was just one of my favorite players in the class.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I didn't talk about him at all in the defensive pod with Deontay because not a first rounder. He is a maniac. Yeah. I wish I did because I did love watching him. He is an absolute lunatic out there. I mean, sometimes the phrase plays with their hair on fire gets overused when you watch players like this. I cannot believe he's just an awesome fit for this defense.
the way that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is coded in terms of like, I'm not the biggest player on the field, but I'm the biggest player on the field, right? A lot of fight in that dog. It's the exact same way Makuba's coded. And Makuba's even smaller than Chauncey was, right? We're talking about a player who's 180 pounds. He's one of the smallest wingspans of any defensive back in combine for the last 25 years. But Howie has historically given these guys shots, right? Like Graylin Arnold was super small and super short. Josiah Scott was super small, super short, stubby arms. And the Eagles bring them in and make them work. He's going to be in that Chauncey role. Makuba will be sometime in the slot, sometime in the box, and they have a thumper in Sidney Brown. And so, like, you know, they'll bring him along slowly. I love the intelligence on the player. I love the intensity on the player.
Really smart player too.
I was so pleased when they got him. And then Ty Robinson, the defensive tackle out of Nebraska. Another hilarious build. He's got 31-inch arms on a 6'5" body. I like to say he looks like a polar bear standing up. You know when bears stand up and you see their front legs, you're like, that's like, it's just proportionally, it's odd. He's weirdly slippery. Like he's just a sneaky good penetration player. I don't have a good explanation for it. Hands, fighting, power, whatever it is. He's productive. He gets in the backfield and causes problems. A very Howie Roseman pick. They triple dip along the offensive line with developmental guys in a very Jeff Stoutland sort of way. Smile Mondon out of Georgia, the linebacker, a productive player, an experienced player. They get their bulldog. Like this was it was an Eagles draft through and through. It was a very good draft.
Kyle McCord enters the Eagles QB factory.
I loved McCord, dude. He was my day 3 guy. McCord, Tanner McKee, quarterback 2 camp battle is what I live for, Mina. It's what I live and die for.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about that. Okay, so you did your homer team. I'm going to do my homer team because I wasn't going to talk about them, but then they just kept adding dudes that I liked. After date, I was like, Emanwari, and then, oh, that's cool. And then they added, and then Arroyo, and then Torrey Horton, and then your guy, Damian Martinez.
Yep. So glad he got off the board. I'm very happy he got picked.
So I'm talking, of course, about the Seattle Seahawks, who really, if I had to, and then the first draft pick, the first round pick was one of the chalkiest picks of the entire first round. It was Gray Zabel, the North Dakota State, offensive lineman, who I think is going to play guard in Seattle. That one was like, John Schneider, you did the normal thing. Right? You didn't do a weird, like we were talking before the show started about how I lost my when the Seahawks took Rashad Penny in 2018 or whatnot. And Field Yates looked at me and started laughing because he knew I was going to as soon as it happened. So Schneider's been like pretty normal. Like takes Charles Cross. That was like the normal pick at the Witherspoon was a little bit surprising, but it wasn't. Most people thought he would have top.
And they're also like, the Lions wanted Spoon at 6. They had to keep it tight. Like that was good. That was good drafting.
Zabel was just normal, but he also fits, I think, the theme of the Seahawks draft, which is athleticism. I mean, this was buddy. They got some athletes in the building. I haven't looked at like RAS doing like the top athletic drafts. You know, the teams that took the most athletic players. But Zabel is incredibly athletic, really perfect fit for Clint Kubiak's zone blocking scheme. Then they take Nick Emanwari. They traded up to get him, which I'm not going to say I loved. And I have questions about his tape, but I think he was like a 10 on RAS, like just an absolute freak. He's an interesting player because he's got this unbelievable build, unbelievable athleticism, unbelievable range and speed, and he has man coverage ability, but he has, I think, a ways to go in terms of playing the position. You see a lot of games who's taking kind of bad angles and just missed tackles. So I'm very interested in seeing what Mike McDonald does with him in particular. We can get to that. Then, third round, they took Jalen Milroe. And you know what? Totally acceptable place to take Jalen Milroe.
Matt Flynn, Russell Wilson. Put the Joker pool stick in the middle of the field and have somebody fight for it, man. I love it. I think it's great.
Let's take a beat. Stop there before we get to the other picks, because there were a lot of really cool other picks. How did you feel like when you saw the Seahawks take Milroe in the third round? What was your reaction?
So at first you're like, surprise. Also, we were all like expecting Shedeur at the next quarterback. So every quarterback that went him, Milroe, Dylan Gabriel, it was like, that was when we were still kind of realizing how it was
Steelers also could have taken Milroe, by the way. It wasn't just about Shedeur for them. We're going to get to them later. But
and so first you're surprised. And then you start thinking about, firstly, right, you're Russell Wilson, Matt Flynn, 2012. This is the same front office. It's easy to forget, but like, they saw it work once. If a team's going to try to go into those waters again, wade in there and get lucky, it would be a team that had been successful with it. it's not a good one-to-one comparison. Wilson was a very prolific starter. He was a much different style of a quarterback, but they're going to feel comfortable kind of playing the QB1, QB2 game with a free agent and with a draft pick. You also, I think, you look at Clint Kubiak and some of the Taysom Hill stuff that they did in short yardage last year, and you say, all right, some of the quarterback power stuff, right? The empty backfield behavior, some of the goal line designs, right? They send guys in motion and do read option stuff. You can see whenever a mobile quarterback gets drafted, there'll be a package for Jalen Hurts. There'll be a package for Lamar Jackson. It's easier to see this time with the way that Kubiak used Taysom Hill last year. I actually believe it, whereas usually I view it with some skepticism. So you see the short-term ad. And then for Milroe, he's a year away as a passer, for sure. He might be 2 years away as a passer. Sam Darnold can hold down a job, right? He absolutely can, right? If Milroe doesn't walk into camp and astonish you, and he's far away as a passer, he needs some time. And I think some time away from Alabama and away from the intensity of that job in the SEC would be good for him. And so I think it's a nice spot for his development.
I agree. I think he should be happy to be there. It's not like, look, Matt,
I heard they had him ranked as the top quarterback in the class.
No, we don't have to do that. But Sam Darnold, look, he's making more than Matt Flynn. Matt Flynn was like $10 million. I don't know what that is in 2025 terms, but it's not a long-term commitment to him in Seattle. So for Milroe, there is an opportunity here to develop, compete, get the job. And look, I've said, I'm not going to pretend like I've changed my opinion on him. I think he's got a long way to go and a lot to work on. But if you're a team without an obviously long-term quarterback like Seattle, a third-round pick on the best athlete and biggest arm in the class is totally worth it to me. Totally worth it. And frankly, I think some other teams also should have made that bet who we're going to talk about.
This is the right way to do the quarterback gamble thing, right?
Yes.
It's like, we're always trying to develop, right?
Round?
Yeah.
Right.
Right. We're here in the third round.
Upside?
We hit our guard need. We hit a safety need. Yeah, sure. We need like some, maybe defensive line help. We could add a receiver, but like he's here. Let's take him. Let's figure it out later. This is the right way to do it.
Elijah Arroyo, he was not my favorite tight end, but again, where they took him, he's really like a big slot kind of guy.
I comped him to Jawan Johnson, exactly, and that's another Clint Kubiak, right? Saints guy, yeah. So there you go.
Really good comp for him. I didn't hear you say that. Super athletic, seam stretcher, brings speed. They want to get multiple tight ends on the field in that offense. And Martinez, you've talked about a lot. I think that bodes. He was not taken early enough to be like, ooh, what's going to happen with Ken Walker, but that's definitely something that's going to be in the air. And then I do want a quick shout out to Colorado State receiver Torrey Horton. That was like I'm saying it was my favorite pick of their draft. Where did they take him? Like the fifth, I think it was.
Late
yeah.
Fifth, yeah.
I mean, so for those who didn't watch him at Colorado State, got injured. I do believe it was pretty early in the season, like halfway through the season or something. I do believe
5 games.
Then if he didn't get injured, he would have gone a hell of a lot higher. This is a big dude who can he's explosive. He's a vertical threat. He's got big playability. I guess you talked about Arroyo being the Juwan Johnson. He's like the MVS in this. Well, I mean, they have
strongly agree. I was so close to tweeting out like a MVS upgrade button Torrey Horton thing, and I was like, nah, I've picked on the Seattle receiver room enough, but 100%, yes, he's the MVS role.
They also took a guy, Ricky White III, out of UNLV, who Kenny Mayne just sent me like 500 words in a text about, and he's a big fan of. So I have no
UNLV
idea.
Guy? Let me do my version of the Kenny Mayne text. I really liked Bryce Cable out of Kansas. I did. He was the best non-combine invite that I watched. Played right tackle for them. Dominic Puna gets drafted, moves to left tackle. Is going to be a guard in the NFL. He's got fast feet. He understands how to use his hands. That is the exact sort of profile that a Shanahan wide zone spamming offense can plug and chug at a guard spot and give you passable play. I like a very good landing spot for Cable. I'm excited to see that fight for the right guard. Assuming Zabel's left guard, that fight for the right guard. I would not be surprised if Cable is in it to the bitter end.
Cool. I like that. They also took the Bama fullback, which we don't have to talk about. All right. Yeah, Clint Kubiak, really, his fingerprints are all over this draft.
A weirdly offensive coordinator impactful draft.
Yeah. Well, it's been the entire damn offseason in Seattle. Yeah. The theme of the Seattle offseason is, so Clint Kubiak, he's really got his influence. Okay. Yeah. You got one more team to highlight.
Yeah, I really appreciated the approach of the Arizona Cardinals. They go Walter Nolan in the first round. They stop the fall of Will Johnson in the second round and go for Oregon defensive end, defensive tackle kind of hybrid player Jordan Burch in the third round, who obviously he's a scheme fit for them. Will Johnson, who's a little bit more of a zone corner, scheme fit for them. Walter Nolan, they needed help at defensive tackle, but not in the terms of depth. They had a lot of depth. What the Cardinals desperately needed, because this is a team that's got a lot of like solid starters. are impactful players. This was a draft for the Cardinals to take some big swings on.
Upside, yeah.
Yeah. And not necessarily like, oh, go trade up again into the first round for a player who's falling. Okay, we're going to talk about one of those in a second. But Will Johnson, the knee might prohibit him from being a second contract player. The toe might flare up again and keep him off the field his rookie season. If it doesn't, like if you roll good dice on the injury thing,
you got the best corner in the draft, yeah.
And you needed a corner one because Max Belton's playing good ball for you and Garrett Williams is playing good ball for you, but you don't want to line either one of those guys up against Puka Nacua for 4 quarters, right? And so in Johnson, you have a player who might be able to achieve that. Maybe not right away as a rookie and everything, but it's worth the swing, right? Walter Nolan, a player who the motor ran admittedly cold at times at Texas A&M and even at Ole Miss. Dude, when it's hot, when we're on, when we care about the football, when we're coming off the ball, it's some of the best defensive tackle film that you saw in this class. So the upside is the big thing.
I think that I love how you kind of captured the theme of the draft, which is the Arizona Cardinals have put themselves in a position where now they can actually go after high upside, high potential players rather than just trying to get competent, baseline starters, because they have Dalvin Thompson and Calais Campbell. You talk about that defensive line. Darius Robinson's coming back. Didn't play much. Because they signed Josh Sweat, it's not like they're desperate for guys. They can really go after guys who, like Walter Nolan and Will Johnson, could both be the best position at their position in the draft. I don't know if they will be. Nolan, I had questions about his consistency. Johnson, obviously, the injury is what caused him to drop. There's no other reason why. And it could be a valid, but I like that they're in the position now where they can take those types of swings. Yeah. Johnson in particular, by the way, I just think it'd be such a great fit for Nick Rallis' scheme if he plays like he did certainly the prior year at Michigan. Really like him as a zone corner more than a man one. I really think he would fit well next to those safeties. Obviously, they found something in Garrett Williams who can play the nickel and he could play outside. So very good potential that this entire offseason in Arizona will help a defense that already took a big leap forward at the end of last season take another leap, not just now, but in the long term.
Yeah, and you have in Paris Johnson Jr., who has looked good when played, but also been banged up. And then in Marvin Harrison Jr., you have kind of the first 2 big swings. They're obviously top 10 picks, so they're big swings by default. But like impactful tackle, impactful wide receiver, and a couple splash players on defense. They also added Josh Sweat in free agency. Like you can see how getting a few stars at the top of this roster would be a gravitational pull that kind of yanks the Cardinals into the next tier of contenders. So the groundwork, the bedrock is good. They've done a nice job in round 3 and round 2 and round 4. You got to hit on some of these early picks. I will say that Monty Ossenfort finally not drafting an Ohio State player in the first round. Did it with Paris, did it with Marvin. He goes Ole Miss, he goes Michigan, Oregon. Right, of course. But then after day 2, on day 3, he just immediately sprints to 2 Buckeyes. Goes and drafts Cody Simon and Denzel Burke. I refuse to leave a draft without a Buckeye.
Kind of like the Denzel Burke pick. Monty Ossenfort being competent, it's bad news for me as a Seahawks fan compared to what Arizona was like. Okay, speaking of the NFC West, let's just do a quick. Any other pick or draft you loved? I'll just go first. We got to give the Rams credit for. We're going to talk about the other side of that, but they deserve a lot of love for getting a first round pick with that trade back. Absolute heist on their part, going down from 26. We'll talk about the Falcons side of that in a moment. So, and then I also really like them adding Terrence Ferguson, the tight end out of Oregon. I know they've been looking for a tight end for a minute, so that's going to be one of mine. How about you?
Yeah, all Buccaneers fans complain that Jason Light's name doesn't get mentioned at the top of these lists.
Good.
And I'm going to talk about Emeka Egbuka as a bit of a brow raiser later. I love the player. Wide receiver is a big surprise for me. But, dude, the rest of the draft, Benjamin Morrison and Jacob Parrish, loved them on film. Parrish is such a Todd Bowles corner. He's an absolute son of a gun. David Walker, the edge out of Central Arkansas, very good against scheme fit for Bowles defensively. They never don't make contact with the ball, the Buccaneers. They always are drafting relative to consensus board, relative to where we expected. They're drafting good scheme fits. They just get it in that building. And so Egbuka we'll talk about. I thought overall, in terms of quality of player, Buccaneers didn't miss.
Cowboys, I'm bringing up with a giant caveat because on one hand, I really liked the players they got. Booker, bit of a reach, but I get it. Ezeraku and Revel Jr., Donovan Ezeraku, the pass rusher, and Sharon Revel Jr., the corner out of East Carolina. Really good players at where they got them and areas of need, and I really think they fit well. I just can't believe they came out of this draft without a receiver and waiting so long on a back. It's just frustrating, but I have to give them credit for the players that they did.
No, I when they took Azariku, I was just like, man, the Cowboys and the second round edges, right? Sam Williams and Marshawn Nealon, they cannot stop investing in the position. And back when it was Dan Quinn, I was like, oh, of course it's Dan Quinn. Now it's just like, no, we're addicted to it. We just love having this deep edge room. So they were good. I liked Washington as well.
Same.
I would have
took my baby.
I was expecting Washington to be willing to put some more chips in with trades up and addressing, positions of need. Oh, we need edge rushers. Their big ads, right, in terms of trades are Laramie Tunsil at tackle, Marshawn Lattimore at corner, Deebo Samuel wide receiver. Their first 3 picks, Josh Connerly at left tackle, Trey Amos, loved Trey Amos at corner, and then Jalen Lane at wide receiver. Fundamentally understanding that, okay, we can get aggressive via free agency trades if we want, but the draft is still about sustaining, and we need to be ready to move off the Laramie deal and the Marshawn deal because there's no more guaranteed money in these deals, right? Because you traded for these players. So I was impressed by Adam Peters' willingness to take one deep breath in his aggressive spending spree on Jaden Daniels, say, all right, forward think a little bit. That's wise team building.
Well put. It wasn't just like, how we're desperate at edge, let's go draft every single edge. It was like, let's put the best players available.
Yeah. Though I will say, would have loved if they could have gotten an edge. But
I know, that's why so similar to the Cowboys, that was another one where I love the players, but I was like, damn, I don't know who's rushing the passer. All right, let's take a quick break, come back, and finally talk about the elephant in the room. All right, we're back.
I can't believe Miles Frazier fell this far. It's unbelievable.
So these are the things that made us go, huh? Or that's even a little strong because for a couple of these, but questions, shall we say. So I wrote the Steelers passing on both Bill Rowe and Sanders is my question. But let's talk about Sanders for a second. Because this Shedeur Sanders story has become so national at this point. It was like the story of the draft to people who don't really follow the draft, that I had friends asking me, what's this about? And I was like, okay, so I have to synthesize this in a couple of sentences. So here's what I've landed on, Ben, as a general explanation for people for why Shedeur Sanders fell to where he did in the draft and why people were so in an uproar about it or confused or validated. Shedeur Sanders falling past the first round into the second or third, I would argue the second, can be explained by his tape.
Yep.
He did not have the tape of a top tier NFL quarterback. I would put it as second round personally. So Shedeur Sanders falling further to the fifth can be explained by how he approached the draft process, which is to say, every piece of reporting that's come out, this is not anonymous. I mean, whatever, but it's all true, suggests that he did not take a normal approach to the draft process. He treated it like he was a top 5 pick, and it rubbed teams the wrong way, or some teams didn't even engage with him at all because of it. So there's all that, plus the NFL's general disdain for anything that could garner controversy, attention, etc. That explains why he dropped from the football range of explanation to where he was taken. How does that sound to you?
I do want to say you preface this by saying this is my 2-sentence explanation.
Yeah, well,
it's a hard 2-sentence to pull off. Yeah, no, I just was laughing as you were going. I very much agree. I think everybody wants to Occam's razor this to one thing, whereas really the Occam's razor is the everything of it all, right? I think that teams would have been more willing to accept some of the limitations on tape if Shedeur was more willing to talk about them in interviews. I think teams would have been more willing to accept some of the bad interviews and the bad, kind of behavior and participation in the process if there wasn't so much, openly flouting it in public during the process and talking about it, with pops and on stream and whatever. Like it was an amalgamation of things. And then as we always know with the NFL, no team wants to break ranks, right? The moment Sanders is falling and, hey, like, we don't like the way that this kid and this family approached the draft process, this young man, approached this draft process, then, now I'm there with my 3rd round pick and I kind of want to draft Shedeur Sanders, but I don't want to be the team that invites all these because I'm just not even going to bother. I'm going to go take my guard. I'm going to keep it chugging. It's simple because it was everything. And that's an unsatisfying explanation. It's a hard one to kind of crystallize as I made fun of you for, but it's the reality.
So things make you a is not that per se, but the Steelers and the Browns in particular are the two teams that I think, well, one of them ended up taking him after they took Dylan Gabriel. So let's start with the Steelers side of it first, because the Browns side of it, I think, is a little bit easier to explain, or at least a little bit more defensible in a way, although them taking Gabriel, I think, can be criticized, and we can get into that. I was on TV on Friday and I was asked about the Steelers, and I said, you know what? I get it. He's not a first round quarterback. I think Derek Harmon is awesome. I think everyone talks about the Steelers having a crappy offense at the end, but the defense really had some issues against the Baltimore Ravens, in case y'all forgot. Their run defense. So I actually really liked this pick, and I like the player, and I like the fact that he gets to play next to Benton and Cam Hayward. It's awesome. So then they took a running back, Caleb Johnson. Very good scheme fit. But I was like, okay, you're not going to go after quarterback here in the third round. And this could be quarterback purely. It doesn't have to be Sanders, right? We're talking. And then the one that put me over the like, okay, I don't think this is a good use of draft capital is when they took Jack Sawyer in the fourth round.
Jack Sawyer was so Steelers coded.
Yeah. Because at this point, and I guess I understand people are saying, well, Shedeur, they did like him. They don't think he's a good player. They don't like him, whatever. But I just felt like from a value perspective and also where you are as a franchise, which is to say Mason Rudolph is your starting quarterback. At this point, I thought like that's bad use of draft capital when there's a quarterback who has second round tape, in my opinion. Now, that's just my assessment of Shedeur's play. Obviously, people can disagree. How did you feel about, and then ultimately they did take a quarterback, Will Howard, in the 6th round, who was not a guy that I'm high on. How did you feel about how they approached this draft?
Again, all my Steelers family members and friends have to inform me he's the new Ben Roethlisberger because he's big, because that's all it takes to be the new Ben Roethlisberger. It is the circumstances of the team that make this specific. It is so that's the critical point that people are missing in the Shedeur storm of it all. If Aaron Rodgers were 100%, yes. Were Aaron Rodgers 100% on the team, where he's signed right now to play for the team on presumably a 2-year deal, it's really a 1-year deal, like that's kind of what I'm assuming it's going to be, were he on the team, and were Shedeur Sanders not into the class, but insert like Graham Mertz never got hurt, right? Curtis Rourke never got hurt. There was like more day 2 options, whatever you want to replace him with in the aggregate. But if we're Rodgers on the Steelers and Shedeur not in the class, I still would have been here in round 4 when they took Jack Sawyer, going, how do we feel good about Rodgers' commitment to football and his health and his age and his behavior and the fact that you have no developmental quarterback? It still would have been the case that the Steelers, after several painful years as a result of neglecting the quarterback position, it still would have been the result that Mike Tomlin was still neglecting the quarterback position. Re-add in the context, which is that, hey, a decently talented NFL quarterback might be falling because of off-field, shenanigans and locker room concerns. It might be worth the swing here on day 3. It might be worth the dart throw. So add in the Shedeur of it all, and then add in the fact that Rodgers is not on the team. Like, it's not, he isn't there.
While we're here, and I kind of brushed over this, they should have taken Milroe instead of the running back, in my opinion. So I was like, this isn't just about Shedeur. This is much more, to your point, about how the Steelers approach the quarterback position. And I was getting into it with Steelers fans. They were like, well, the plan is to, be not good this year, and next year is the class. Oh, the famously game-losing Pittsburgh Steelers, who, by the way, are in a division now with a team that loaded up for next year.
Every year, all Steelers fans do is complain about that they're 8-8. So how can you believe that you're going to be bad? It's Mike Tomlin and the Steelers and Omar Khan and the Steelers organization as a whole. They and the Saints are the two teams that they carried a veteran quarterback into the 2010s, into the 2015 and beyond. They carried one that they got back in 2004 and 2008, whatever. So they didn't have to go through what everybody else went through, learning about the modernizing of the quarterback position and how much the guy matters and how hard it is to go get him and how much it costs. And the Steelers really just continue to sit there obstinately and say, well, we drafted Ben Roethlisberger in 2004 and he ended up good. And so that's just the way, you should be able to figure out quarterbacks. Like, man, the smart teams are taking dart throw after dart throw, opportunity after opportunity, multiple guys out on the roster. Like, it is as I
try.
Yeah, you have to modernize your thought around the quarterback position, or you're going to continue to be in these bad spots.
It's also like after you get past the 2nd round, cool, right? Like do we is the upside of Jack Sawyer Sorry to make Jack Story the focus point, but that was when I said too far on the
but I strongly agree.
Is that upside worth the cost, right? Of potentially, I just don't. But then on the flip side, you have the Cleveland Browns, who took 2 quarterbacks. They had the weirdest freaking draft, dude. I saw somebody. Okay, so for those who missed it, the Browns did a big trade with the Jags. We're talking about the Jags in a second, moving down to pick 5, acquiring a lot of draft capital for future first, second. What I actually think is, I think that trade made a lot of sense for Cleveland. But they move down, they get Mason Graham, then they take Carson Schwarzenegger, the linebacker out of UCLA, who's a player I like a lot. Then they do Quinshon Judkins.
Quinshon Judkins, yeah. There's too many consonants. It's a tough one.
Harold Fannin Jr., Dylan Gabriel, Dylan Sampson,
love it.
Shedeur. Okay, so like I like all these players. The order, somebody did a reordering of them on Twitter. I saw
every year there's one draft that gets reordered, right? Like the Lions when it was
the Lions, the Brian Branch draft. Yeah,
every year we reorder at least one.
Okay, but what if Shedeur went in the 3rd round, and then Gabriel went in the 5th round, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is adding up. I don't know. I wish they had gotten more players at high value positions, to be honest. Like, I don't think this team is in a place to take 2 running backs in the draft. I'll just say it.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me. Your offensive line, help. Yeah. Like, what are we doing here?
The Sampson pick was like, all right, I'm glad Sampson got picked. I think he deserved to get picked. He thought he was falling a little bit. But also, yeah, like the Browns, like I
they go good together. Like the players work well together, Judkins and Sampson. But again, it's the Browns. But the Gabriel, I think, was when
Gabriel was just simply the most surprising pick of the top 100, right? Like that was just I can't think of anybody who before the draft was like, man, watch out for Dylan Gabriel in round 3. Like that just took me for a loop.
So I love they had to take a quarterback, and they also loaded up for next year, as we alluded to go after the quarterback, which I love. Makes perfect sense. I just don't understand the process that got them to the point that they're at. It does feel like the Sanders pick was either owner influenced or just like, hey, value, let's just do this. And I get that to some degree. I don't know how. I mean, it's the most insane quarterback room on planet Earth. It's Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, Joe Flacco, and I guess Deshaun Watson.
Maybe even, yeah, exactly. I saw somebody hit the Browns quarterback room with the classic, like every group chat has these guys meme, but it was just like a 3rd rounder, a 5th rounder with like a media company. And like, okay, not every group has this, but it's gonna be the most well-known quarterback room in the league. Like there will be fans of teams that don't know their own quarterback 2 that know the Browns quarterback 4. I find that very funny.
I will say, this is an opportunity for Sanders to, if not win the starting job, like at least beat out Dylan Gabriel to be QB2 and Pickett. I guess I have no idea how it's going to shake out. I'm giving the Browns a mixed grade, though, to be honest, because again, I like their players and I do like that they got that capital for next year. It's just the Gabriel, I mean, Dylan Gabriel to me, like I actually kind of liked him as like a sprightly backup who could come into a Shanahan offense and kind of surprise people. I just feel like 3rd round with all their needs, it didn't make sense. All right, that's the end of our Shedeur Sanders segment today. Let's get to the Falcons. Okay, so we talked about how the Browns draft makes sense if you flip the orders. So if the Falcons draft didn't involve a trade, I would love it. If they had just gotten James Pierce Jr. at pick 26,
yeah.
I gotten Jalen Walker at pick 15 and Xavier Watts and Billy Bowman later on, I would have been like, hey, Falcons, hell yeah, baby. Like invest in that defense, throw resources at pass rush, got these 2, cool safeties. When Walker fell in at 15, I was feeling good. And then the monkey's paw curled. I just, when that trade came through, so okay, so we should say what it is. To get the pick 26, the Rams pick, the Falcons sent the Rams their 2nd rounder, which is 46, so 20 picks down, which is a pretty big jump. And their 7th this year, and a 1st rounder. And I think part of the reason why this felt so dumb and bad was that the Jackson Dart trade had just happened, and the
it required 2/3. Now it is, if you throw this into a calculator, it ends up not looking too crazy because
I know I did that. Yeah.
The Falcons also, like, they got from the Rams 101 and sent to the Rams 242. So that for the cost of a future first, they moved from 46 to 26, and they moved from 242 to 101. So, okay, 2 big move ups in the 2025 draft, and we will give you our 2026 first rounder. Yeah. So that makes it look better in the calculator. However, you have traded a future first to move up in the first round for a pass rusher and James Pierce Jr., who, like, reportedly doesn't super love football, is
the
a one-speed rusher.
Factoring into this.
Yeah. It is a one-speed rusher. You just drafted a sub 250-pound rusher, by the way, and Jalen Walker. Like, you can't, it's hard to put 2 of those guys on the field at the same time. On 3rd and 8, it's easy, but otherwise it's very challenging, and not every down is 3rd and 8. And also, like Falcons, and this is the part that really just gets me going, you might be bad. What if you're bad? I know you're planning on being good, but what if you're playing Emeka Penix? You don't know if he's good yet. The hubris is astonishing.
Yeah, I think it's the context here matters. So it's not just the value, but it's the player, it's the team and where they are. It's the fact, again, I don't mind them taking another edge. I don't even mind them taking Pierce Jr., who he is a high variance player, shall we say. He was unbelievably athletic, explosive guy who's just really inconsistent, I thought. And but it's just so much to go get him, and I don't know. We'll see.
In the words of Sean McVay, quote, "It was too good to pass up." You don't often hear on the night of a draft trade, well, it was just so good we couldn't pass it.
McVay was like, I guess they really like James Pierce. I did like the Watts pick, Bowman. Like, those are fun players, especially with Jesse Bates. Like, look, if the Atlanta Falcons win the NFC South and let's say finish with like the, I don't know, 15th for now.
I'm about to say, if they're making the playoffs, it's in the 20s somewhere.
Yeah. All right. The 20th pick. Mm-hmm. How do we feel about it? I think it depends on how Pierce is as a player, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's funny because in some ways it is like the same logic that drove the Penix Cousins thinking, which I guess is, if I had to like capture what's my problem with this, is like both that move, the Penix Cousins combo, and this move, the Walker Pierce combo, feel like the moves of a desperate organization.
Yeah. And
like
also
not a well-run one.
And also, like, all right, you're going to get your guys and you're making sure you get them. That's great. An enormous part of a successful draft night is playing the board and playing the other 31 teams, right? You drafted Penix at 8, if memory serves. Yeah, 8. I think that maybe you could have moved back and still gotten Penix. You drafted Pierce at 26. I think you maybe could have still gotten him at 46. And would it hurt if neither one of those ended up being true? Yes, but that's part of the draft. Players you have ranked very highly get drafted. Improvise, adapt, overcome, right? The Texans at 25 wanted Donovan Jackson. He goes at 24 to the Vikings. They trade out of the pick. We're going to go get Iowa State receivers, baby. Here we go. Like,
we'll talk about the Texans in a second.
Yeah, you can't just die on on plan 1A on the draft, because you're going to become inflexible, and accordingly, you're going to end up spending future capital.
I do like the Jalen Walker pick. I will say, I was high on him. I thought he was the second best edge rusher in this draft. Mm-hmm. I really love the versatility, and I know he's a bit of a tweener, but I think just the athleticism and power, and also he's a good fit for that defense. So I think there's a world in which we look back at this and the defense takes a leap forward and we feel okay about it, but there's also a world in which this backfires pretty spectacularly. Yeah.
They had Aiden Ellis last year, right, in that rush linebacker role, and Jalen Walker is that. I love the Walker fit there. I was so ready to praise the Falcons round 1, and then they
I know, and then the falconing commenced. Okay, let's talk about the Jags here. So this is, I think, a more nuanced. They're not a draft loser. If you come out of the draft with the coolest player in the draft, you are not a loser. And I don't dislike the fact that I thought, not to be boring about it, but I thought the Browns-Jags trade was, I wouldn't say win-win, but it made sense for both sides.
Yeah,
I
great way of
completely
saying
see where the teams are, their particular needs, who the player is. It made sense to me. When the Jags took Travis Hunter, Ryan Clark and I have been talking about this for months now. Like, what should Travis play? And as you and I talked about it, I thought, well, he could play receiver. He could be a great receiver. Mm. I really believe that. If the Browns had taken him and made him a receiver, I would have been like, all right, cool. He's a good receiver. Like, he's a great receiver, actually. When the Jags took Hunter, I went, woohoo! Because my thinking was, this is perfect. He can be one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL last year. They desperately need a corner, opposite Tyson Campbell. He can play corner for them. And then for however many plays a game, they can slot him in as a receiver with Brian Thomas Jr. That's going to be sick. I love this. They're calling him a receiver. So I guess that's what I wanted to talk about, because I thought, like, this is the perfect team for him to do the best way to use him, to the optimal usage, so that you can play him both ways. They seem to be convinced, like everybody, that they can play him a receiver with a little bit of cornerback. I continue to be befuddled by that logic. Ben, where are you?
Again, another throwing a guy's quote back in his own face. James Gladstone said of Travis Hunter, "You got a bold vision for what you want to do on planet Earth, and we've got a bold vision for you." Which, like, Gladstone is clearly thrilled by the idea of, like, once in a generation, two-way player. Like, we're going to change the sport. He's clearly fully in there on, like, you cannot get a player. And it's not necessarily like who can play all of the snaps. He's going to play all the snaps all the time, but like that presents this much utility to you, right? It's a very like analytical thinking. Oh, I can try him at receiver. I can try him at corner. I can change it if I have injuries. Like, you know, there's so much utility here for this guy. Yeah. So great. You're enamored with it. I get it too. I was enamored with it. As always in these conversations with Travis Hunter, he's like 185 pounds. And I just don't like if you are going to give him, like, it sounds like they want to give him all receiver snaps, and then also like a non-substantial number of, or non-unsubstantial, like a significant number of corner snaps. Sounds like they want him to be on the field in the red zone, on the field on third down, like clear passing downs. And it's like, man, I'm so excited to see what that looks like. I really am. I'm fascinated to discover stuff, but I am worried about the size and the individual player on a team that's this gung-ho about ringing him for all the juice he's got.
But the reverse is so much easier.
Yeah, that's my, yeah.
I'm like, and your pass defense sucks. Mm-hmm. We gave you a guy who could become truly, I believe, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yep. I've always leaned corner on him. That's always where I wanted to see him.
I guess also the other thing I'll say about the Jags is like the amount of draft capital that they gave up, right? Which is I don't have it in front of me. It's a lot. It's a first. It's a one. What, you know? This is
future first, second, fourth. It was a lot.
Adds up to, you know, he's the first receiver to be drafted in the top 3 since 2007. Calvin Johnson, no pressure, and he's the second corner to be taken in the top 2 since 1967. Okay, so that capital to me like suggests that like playing him both ways it's not necessary, but like to recoup it, so to speak, there's actually like, okay, like, yeah, we're drafting him like we're going to get plus production out of him. Mm-hmm. But it's so much easier to get plus production if he plays defense first. So maybe he'll be awesome at receiver and he'll be good at corner situationally and prove me wrong. If there's any human on earth who's capable of doing that, it appears to be this young man. I just feel like they're not setting him up for success in the way that when they took him, I thought they were. But
the most important thing were if Hunter went to the Jaguars at 2, if he went to the Browns at 2, if he somehow fell and he ended up somewhere else, like no matter where he landed up, the most important thing was going to be that when you walk onto the field in August for training camp, heck, even in May and June for rookie minicamp, like just when you introduce him to NFL athletes and you see it on the field, you got to be open-minded with it, right? Okay, you have a vision right now. And like, obviously you wanted to fill a need at wide receiver. You wanted to fill a need at corner. Okay, great. I get it. Be flexible and reactive when you watch him play and you watch him move. If you can tell that like for the light bulb in year 1, it's on for receiver and it's off for corner, put your chips there, get him successful in one role, like work with the player. He clearly cares so much about playing the game well, but also cares about being this two-way guy. You have to be willing to let this be a living thing. Because if you pigeonhole him now, I think that's the way you get in a lot of trouble down the road.
Do you have another that you'd like to?
The Emeka Egbuka pick at 19 just it surprised me at the time. I've now read the quotes and the explanation. I appreciate the forward thinkingness of it. I still just am like, man, this is a very good offense that returned all 11 starters from last year and also invested in the developmental wide receiver spot in Jalen McMillan last year with a third round pick. Yeah. And okay, if you lost Godwin, obviously, but you snagged Godwin, you got him back. And you didn't get back on a 1-year deal. It's a multi-year deal. The cumulative weight of some of the wide receiver uncertainty. Mike Evans is coming to a contract
I was
here.
just about to, pull up.
Chris Godwin is coming off of a very major injury. And McMillan was just a 3rd-round pick. Like, he obviously played great, but, it's not like a first rounder and it's lock and load or whatever. I think the cumulative uncertainty at receiver led them to feel comfortable enough to take a player who, like, was very highly ranked on their board and is a very good scheme fit and thought they were fine. That's great. That's wonderful. You talked about, how are we going to feel about the Falcons if the defense takes a step forward next year? Man, if the Buccaneers are back to having like a playoff caliber offense, not just playoff caliber, but like they had a top 5 unit last year by every metric. This was a very good offense. They get right back to that and they're still just dying to routes over the middle of the field because the linebackers can't play well. I'm going to be like, man, like, again, like,
John Campbell was right there, dude.
And like maybe he medically wasn't your guy. I get it, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to like force like, Campbell's good for the Eagles. Like, oh, should have been the Buccaneers. That you don't know that in April. But I continue to raise my eyebrow at the Egbuka investment. Good player, and then they immediately went corner, understanding like, all right, that was a little bit luxury. Now let's get after the spots we need to get after. So I appreciate the awareness of what happened there. But I don't know. Emeka Egbuka, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan, Mike Evans, Bucky Irving, Kate Otten. There's only one ball on the field, man. Like, that's a lot of mouths to feed.
I think it reflected something that I kind of ran into when I was doing my mock drafts, which was after the top, it was hard to justify a lot of defensive players going in the middle of the first round. Like, a lot of them made sense at the end, but there like wasn't an obvious second tier of pass rushers, especially with when Mike Green fell out of the first round and it became apparent that teams, by the way, I feel like I have to apology. When I talked about Mike Green on my show and I mentioned that he had multiple allegations of sexual assault, I very flippantly was like, but we know the NFL. Well, apparently I didn't know the NFL because that not clearly, so, and who knows what other information they gathered in their teams. But I just wanted to mention that really quick. Baltimore ended up taking him. But, after Walker went at 15, there was clearly a drop-off at edge, unless you're the Atlanta Falcons.
Shamar Stewart goes 2 picks later, baby.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. So he goes 2 picks. So I guess that might have been someone they were looking at. And then corners, Johnson fell. So
I really thought they might be a Barron team because Barron seemed like a scheme fit. And the fact that the Broncos took Barron, which also was a little bit of like a, do you need corner that badly? A little bit of eyebrow raiser indicates to me that the Broncos at 20 really thought Barron was not going to be there. They thought he was going to be the pick at 19.
It is
and then
funny,
they fell and they grabbed him.
If you flip the picks, they would make sense. I think Egbuka is one of those players that not to be like a cliche, but the NFL was very high on. Mm-hmm. And we were high on him. We talked about him. But, I think maybe that was something. I think a lot of teams really liked him is the sense I got. And I think he was the guy also who, like, they liked him on tape. They liked him a lot in the building. Everything coming out is that he is like a Chris Godwin, not only like player, but a Chris Godwin like person as well. Mm-hmm. So, they got a replica. But I agree with you. I do worry about that defense a lot and whether they did enough to improve to kind of get over the hump. I'm just not convinced. I have kind of a similar angle, I suppose, but a very different issue. The Houston Texans. My quarterback. He's dying. My guy. And it's hard because they took both Iowa State receivers, mm-hmm. both of whom I liked. Like, I like these players a lot. Incredible bit, by the way, taking both, especially since they're kind of similar to the players that they have.
Yeah,
Collins
absolutely.
and Kirk.
Yeah.
And they did take an offensive tackle who's a very high variance, kind of like a very high ceiling, high floor guy in Arante Ursary out of Minnesota. Mm-hmm. But if I was them, like I mean, they traded out of the first round. Everything they did was like defensible in a vacuum. Everything they've done is defensible in a vacuum. But in the real world, CJ Stroud was one of the least protected quarterbacks in football last year. And I have zero confidence that it's going to be significantly better this season.
Yeah. And they like Nick Collins, Caserio. I always call him Collins. Caserio. Made like 6 draft day trades, right? Like he was very aggressive moving up and down the board for guys. it's not like, oh man, the board didn't fall to us. It's like, all right, like, we feel good with where we're at after we take Ursary in round 2. Like Ursary's gonna, I presume, fight for the left tackle job with Cam Robinson. They're gonna leave Blake Fisher at right tackle. That's my understanding right now. I don't know if that's gonna change in camp. That really worries me at the right tackle spot. All those interior spots for Ed Ingram and Laken Tomlinson fighting with the incumbents, like none of that feels great to me. But apparently they feel like they have enough. It was when they traded a future third to get up in the 4th round to draft Woody Marks, a player who I liked quite a bit at running back and who fits wonderfully with Joe Mixon. The fit is excellent. I totally understand why the Texans like him and evaluate him as a 4th round player. But it's once you trade the future third to solve running back 2 that it's like, hey, Nick, the offensive line, dude. Like, have you not seen what we were seeing? I agree with you. I'm a little less worried about it simply because I think that, right, they have enough. Like, I think Juice Scruggs, like Titus Howard at left guard, I can get there. But yeah, I would like to double dip at receiver and to make sure you secure Graham Mertz at quarterback 3, but only walk away with one offensive lineman. Yeah, it's like, come on.
It's like almost obstinate at a point. Like, this was so clearly the glaring weakness. And it's funny because something kind of noticed is at the end of the 1st round, a lot of the playoff teams, and this happens every year, pick a player who's like exactly why they failed in the playoffs. Like, for example, a lot of teams like Washington going offensive line to some degree, right? The Chiefs going offensive line. The Vikings going interior offensive line. The Packers going the receiver. The Chargers, who had no run game at the end, going right. But like the Bucs were just like, nah, we're good. Like I would have loved if they had taken one of the Joshes, Connerly Jr. or Josh Simmons. I really would have liked that, even if it was a little bit of a reach at 25, and like obviously not that much of a reach. But I don't know, man. I generally don't like it when teams are like, no, we like our guys. Should you?
Right, and it's the implication that, well, since we like our guys, we don't really want to draft to the positions. Like, well, guess what? Yeah. Do you hate Christian Kirk? Right? Do you like? You have to pick. You have to pick players at positions, and so it isn't a referendum on your guys, your incumbents, when you draft dudes. Like, there's worlds where this works. There's worlds where the interior and the shuffling is good, and Kenyon Green is out of there, and the communication's better, and the room is better. There's also worlds where like 2 guys get hurt. Right, you have to acknowledge these realities, these kind of poor case scenarios. Which again, I'm sure they did their risk reward, and they said, we like our depth. We made all these additions. They have tons of dart throws. It's the offensive line, though, dude. Like it's that weak league system. If you're wrong at 1 of 5 spots, you're wrong, and you would like to see that addressed. I think yes, a little bit more urgently.
Let's wrap on a positive note here. Is there any other pick that we haven't talked about that you absolutely loved? Don't do some like 7th round shit on me. Like,
I was sprinting to do some 7th round on you. I was very excited. Jack Besh, the 2nd round pick at wide receiver at TCU. Yeah, to the Raiders. That's right. I did talk about Besh here. Yeah. I just think Besh is a very cool fit for a Chip Kelly offense, and also a very cool fit next to Brock Bowers, because there's sometimes which having redundant skill sets is bad and there's not enough room to go around. There's other times in which when you have a really good run after the catch tight end in Brock Bowers, you bring in a very good run for the catch receiver in Besh, and you basically say, listen, like, we're going to put a lot of stress on you in the designed, quick, underneath passing. And like, we have multiple options here. There's going to be Raiders drives this year where Geno doesn't do anything, and they walk the football down the field because of the running game and because of some of the scheme stuff on the outside. Like, they're going to be really dynamic, ball in hand players. Genty, obviously, and then Besh. I like the wisdom there. I like the redundancy there. I thought that was cool.
Pete Carroll taking Darian Porter, by the way.
Right on the meme. The best part was him walking out in the press conference and being like, honestly, guys, some of these height, weight, speed corners with length, you really like these cats. Like, we know, Pete. You don't have to explain this.
Yeah, right. Yeah, buddy.
Thanks for taking us behind the curtain there, but we've riddled it out with you. We have.
Mason Taylor, who we both like, the tight end, going to the Jets in the 2nd round. The Jets, I thought, had a very like sensible draft. We didn't highlight it, but that was
who did very well. I thought the Chiefs did quite well. Simmons is the exact sort of like
perfect at 32.
He's such a good space player. He needs the year, like, get healthy, whatever. Ashton Gelati, the edge out of Louisville, is just like classic Spags edge. He's bad at sacking the quarterback. He's good at everything else, right? Just like you just kind of like detonate him, you blow up a side of the line, somebody else cleans it up. And then Noah Williams, whenever Spags gets a DB, right, kind of in that middle round area, your ears perk up. Noah Williams, in press coverage at Cal was a sight to see. He was really fun to watch. He's not super big, but he punched above his weight. And they have a lot of uncertainty at outside corner, right? Jalen Watson, Christian Fulton, Josh Williams. They have some rising free agents. They're adding Williams to that room, and someone's going to win a job. So as a third-round pick, he's in the 70s. He's going to have a chance to start early. Jalen Royals in the 4th round. I thought that was, air raid style receiver going to a spread style offense. Yeah, that's just good, solid Chiefs draft all over the place.
I was, by the way, Siobhan Revel. I said Sharon. I got his name wrong every single time I've said it.
Siobhan Revel. It's a weird one.
The Dolphins having like the most meat and potatoes first couple rounds ever was funny. But I will say that the offensive lineman they drafted out of Arizona, Savanea, I might be saying anything wrong. I think he'll be good as a guard. I think that was a really good pick for them. I love Kenneth Grant. There's a value question, but I love the player. But I just like that love. They were like, no, we have to get physical. We got to beat the allegations this year.
They signed in undrafted free agency Jalen Conyers, who was the quarterback turned tight end out of Texas Tech, like huge body, Logan Thomas style, like incredible athlete. He did like Taysom Hill stuff for them in the running game. You could just tell that Mike McDaniel was just like being kept somewhere in a corner. Like, nope, we're going guards. We're doing this. The moment undrafted free agency hit, they just like let him out. Like, all right, go do whatever you want. Here we go. Let's go get weird, cool players on offense.
Part of me wanted them to take Shedeur, by the way. They, to me, were like a totally sensible, but they took Ewers, which was pretty funny.
Sure. There was one point on day 3 where someone was like, we're all talking about the Shedeur fall. What about Ewers? And I was like, no.
I will say Graham Mertz going before Ewers was pretty wild. But in any case, that's not the end of my draft talk this week. Before I go to my once-a-week schedule, I am going to do another podcast because if you're listening to this and you're a New York Giants fan and you're like, what the heck? You haven't talked about Jackson Dart, or you're a Titans fan and you've been the overlooked team this entire
Poor
draft.
Titans fans, man.
Titans fans, I did an entire quarterbacks pod where I raved about Cam Ward for like 30 minutes and people were like, enough about Cam Ward. So you go listen to that. You'll like it. But no, I'm going to talk about Cam Ward. I'm going to talk about Jackson Dart. I'm going to talk about Tyler Shook. Brett Coleman is joining the show later this week. Talk about that and some of the other stuff that I didn't get to today. But in the meantime, you guys should go check out Ben's clips. Are they all on YouTube as well?
I'm tweeting, the replay of the day 2 live stream and the day 1 recap are all on the ESPN NFL YouTube.
Okay.
I know I'm doing this and then I'm going in the garden for a week. No one's going to hear from me. There's nothing to plug, baby. It is May. I am never working again. Football will never exist again. It is over and I'm thrilled.
All right. Well, we'll try to have you out sometime. But in the meantime, you can check out everything we're doing at youtube.com/@Mina Kimes. There's also some Love is Kimes related news coming down the pike. So just wait on that. But thank you, as always, to Ben, to the fine folks at Omaha Productions, Kirsten Sebecki, Anthony Jimenez, Owen Saylor, Jack Foster, Tucker Taschen, and I'll see you guys later this week.